Hi all, I had an interesting but flawed game last night against J.Bass of West London Chess Club. To give a little bit of background for this game, I don't normally play for Muswell Hill in the away matches in the Middlesex League. To get to this game at the West London club, I left more than an hour before the game, an hour to get there. So with sat-nav, I was just lost at one point, having to find my way to the town hall. And the reason I really wanted to play in this match is, last year when, last time rather, when Muswell Hill was promoted into Division 1, we were kicked down again immediately. And it was a shame, we couldn't win any of the key matches which we might have had a chance. So that's why I really wanted to play in this away match. So I arrived about 25 minutes late, maybe 20 to 25 minutes late. I kicked off with e4, and after c5 I thought I'd try and surprise my opponent a little. I played b4, and instead of taking the pawn, he actually played b6. So he surprised me, not accepting this wing gambit. So I took on c5 and I played bishop c4. And I think white's okay here actually. White's got a slight advantage according to Rybka. This is not very unknown territory. He played e6, and after knight c3 I do have more resources than usual because of the absence of that b pawn, like bishop a3, potentially rook b1. So it's an interesting position, but maybe my position is a little bit more tactically fragile as well. He played now knight c6 and I played knight f3, and after d6 I thought, do I really want to castle and potentially not play d4? If I don't, how am I going to exploit, for example, the vulnerability of d6? So actually I did try and open up the position, and perhaps there's some slight tactical risks here, like queen a5, because of the absence of the b pawn. This might be more effective than usual. But actually, let's have a look. Queen a5, maybe queen d2 is possible, or Rybka's actually giving bishop d2. So let's have a look at this pawn gambit. Knight takes d4. Currently rook b1. Castles, knight f6. Now e5. So that's an interesting variation. Slight advantage to white apparently. So it's all a bit messy. It's all a bit out of territory. But he just took on d4. So he's giving me this tactical vulnerability, the d6 pawn. And furthermore, he sort of, I thought, exacerbated it with bishop d7, because why not now knight db5? I know I haven't really completed my development fully, I haven't castled yet, but I thought this is a great opportunity to target that d6 pawn. After knight e5, I just retreat to e2, and now I've got a potential even for f4. Here, after bishop c6, yes, he's got some pressure on e4, but he's not really developed. His king's still in the centre. I can also just play f4 here. Maybe just chase that knight. Maybe that's better than what I played. But what I played I thought was quite good as well. I just played bishop a3. So that's afforded by the loss of the b pawn. So, what is he doing about this pressure? I was looking forward to him playing d5, so I could maybe just take on f8. But actually, maybe there's even stronger here. Just queen d4. So attacking e5 and a7. So say knight g6. Bishop takes, king takes, check. Maybe knight takes a7 now. So that's all a bit messy though, I don't know. But maybe white's better. So anyway, in the game, after bishop a3, he played knight f6. And I can clearly just take that pawn now with just knight takes d6. But I thought I'd try something a bit more clever and sophisticated. But let's have a look. Just knight takes, say this variation, and now just supporting e4, so he's hardly got any pressure. And say he castled queenside, I can castle queenside, and there's a star move coming up which Rybka finds. So rook d4 is very interesting, because now after a5, because the threat was rook b4 check, king d2, believe it or not, and the other rook can come in for the attack. So that's big advantage to white. So anyway, after queen d4, I played queen d4 instead of just taking the pawn. He played knight g6, and again, whatever way I take the pawn, actually, it is good for white, but the easier way to take it is just to take with the knight. I took with the bishop, of course, to complicate things. If I take with the knight, let's have a look at this. Bishop takes, bishop takes. Here, his king's cut off from castling. He can't ever play king e7 unless he moves the bishop. So white has got a big non-controversial advantage here. He's got no knight takes e4. His position is too vulnerable. I just take, and there's no bishop takes because queen takes on his rook, or even worse, just queen a4 check here, winning the queen. Queen d7, bishop b5. So after bishop takes, there's nothing here. You know, Rybka gives e5, just giving up another pawn. I can just take, and this is just nothing for black, just 2 pawns down. So basically, how did I mess this up? You might be wondering. Well, I took with bishop. So this is the beginning of unnecessary pressure on my position, because he took, and now he played king e7. And all of a sudden I do have to play very precisely. Like in another Muswell Hill match, it seems to be I missed these e5 pawn sacrifices, and here e5 incredibly is a very strong move. At first it might look stupid, and that's why, this is why I rejected it. I thought, you know, it doesn't do anything. I want to support the knight, of course, but is the logic of the pawn move just to support the knight? Not necessarily, because after knight takes e5, of course I don't want to play queen takes e5, queen takes d6. There's nothing there. But here, what I've done is created a vulnerability of the e5 knight, a tempo gain, and here actually castling queenside, believe it or not. So I've got basically now a double threat of queen b4 and queen takes e5, and black's busted here, it seems. For example, knight g6, queen b4, and you know, how's black getting out of this? He's losing his queen, for example, like this. So of course I didn't see e5 as a pawn sacrifice. It should be noted actually that rook d1 is not as precise as castling queenside, because maybe he can wriggle out now with queen a5, and this starts to get messy, this kind of variation with knight takes, knight e4 here. So this is all very messy, all very tactical, and white can only have a small advantage here apparently. Basically in the game, after knight takes king e7, I played rook d1, and it would be lovely if he did play something like queen a5. So look, queen a5, because we both thought knight f5 was crushing, but in fact knight c4 seems technically stronger according to Rybka. But let's have a look at knight f5. So knight f5, actually this does seem to be crushing. So king g8, and now just queen takes c6. So that would have been great, but unfortunately he played a very good move, queen b6, and this really does question everything about the knight being on d6. So it seems now the headline is I've won the battle of winning the d6 pawn, but lost the war now, because my position is very vulnerable here. I took on b6, so I'm giving him a file pressure as well as potential c file pressure, and here I just crack up. I should have played bishop b5, which might keep me in the game with a tiny technical advantage, but very difficult to play position. Instead I blunder horribly. I play a4, and you know, partly, you know, I was disillusioned now. I was trying to, you know, perhaps to catch up on the clock as well. Some of these moves have been very inaccurate, but if you arrive really late, this is what happens. So he took on a4, and I'm just worse now. I castle, but a better move is apparently just rook d4, rook d2. But after rook h d8, that's another strong move. So I move my knight back, and he just takes on c2. So all of a sudden now I'm material down, and I take on d8 and just play for e5 here. And with this I offer a draw, knowing full well that my position's awful. And I don't know if my opponent was in a really generous mood because of the earlier phase of the game where he seemed to have this pawn and pre in two different ways, and he was perhaps losing earlier. Maybe he felt, I don't know, bad about that, but he accepted the draw to my relief. In terms of another battle being lost but the war being won, in fact, by playing on board one, I did actually push the rest of the team down in strength, and so we actually won the match convincingly with 7-1. So we only had 2 draws and 6 wins. So I was very pleased to see the email of that later. So anyway, I hope there's some insight there for you. It's not the greatest game in the world, but there were some practical issues around the game, like getting there in time, etc. Hope you enjoyed that. Please leave any comments on YouTube. Thanks very much.